All right? The angle curve plots optimal consumption of Hershey's against levels of income. This thing is upward sloping. What does that tell me? As incomes go up, do I consume more of the good or less of it? More, right? So incomes go up, I consume more of it. Does that seem like a normal way to behave? Yeah, generally, yeah, right? So as incomes go up, you consume more of it. That seems sort of normal, so we call that a normal good, right? If incomes go up, you consume more of something that's called a normal good. You could argue with me on philosophical grounds, but I'm not smart enough for philosophy, all right? So we're going to stick with that designation. If incomes go up, you consume more of it, it's a normal good. If incomes go up and you consume less of it, any examples of things? As soon as you get out of here and you make, I don't know what undergrads make when you get out of here, $70,000? Yeah, in your dreams, max. 40, I don't know. So let's say you score a job at a big-time consulting firm, you really make it big, you make $100,000. What are you currently consuming that you will be glad to get rid of? You guys know exactly what you're going to do. What was it? Well, your head. Cup of noodles, right? Ramen packets. Even though if you watch David Chang's excellent PBS series on cooking, he does a lot of cool things with 29-cent packets of ramen noodles. But that's a different story. But we can all think of goods that as soon as our incomes go up, we're going to consume fewer of those goods, right? Cup of noodles, ramen, I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, right? Cheap beer. Even though I was at a fancy bar for a fancy dinner in New York the other day, and I said, do you have any beers? I said, yes, we have Pabst Blue Ribbon. I was like, you're charging $36 for a plate of noodles, and the best you can come up with is Pabst Blue Ribbon. Very interesting. So we'll talk about those types of goods also. Those are really weird goods. But the goods that generally, as incomes go up, we want to consume less of, we call those inferior goods. That's just standard language. So let's talk about this a little bit, and let's talk about a concept that doesn't really fit in very well elsewhere in this particular course. I want to introduce you to something called an elasticity. All right? Elasticities are your friend. So if I'm telling you that if the price of gasoline goes up by $1, the number of gallons consumed of gasoline in California goes down by 20,000 gallons a day, is that a lot? Is that a little? You have no idea, right? Versus if I told you the price of gasoline went up by 10% and the quantity consumed of gasoline in California went down by 20%, does that seem like a big price response? Yeah, that seems like a huge price response. So the nice thing is the latter concept I just expressed is just putting the same thing in terms of the same information, but in terms of a unitless measure, right? So elasticities are really beautiful measures. You can use them in anything you want, but we're going to use them in the context of how responsive quantity demanded is to the own price of the good. They're unitless measures of how quantity demanded responds to price. If I told you that if Airbus, which is a European manufacturer of large airplanes, raised the price on its flagship huge thing, the A380, by $500,000, and quantity demanded went down by 20, is that a lot? Is that very responsive? I have no idea, because you need to know additional information. How many of these planes does Airbus sell in any given year, and how much does this thing cost, right, in order to judge whether that price increase is actually a big increase in price or not, and whether the response in quantity demanded is actually a big response or not. So what elasticity does is it just expresses the same information in percent terms. So the elasticity, and we write it fancy, right? All economists secretly dream of being mathematicians. We do. Much cooler. We, by the way, have one of the most awesome math departments in the entire world up in Evans Hall. But the point here is this is epsilon for elasticity, right? A little bit of Greek, always good. QD just means quantity demanded. So the first thing that you put in subscripts here is the object you're interested in, how responsive it is. So I want to know how responsive is quantity demanded to. So in the comma next to it, you put the quantity to which you want to measure the responsiveness of. So the elasticity of quantity demanded with respect to price is simply defined as what's the change, the percent change in quantity demanded due to a percent change in price, right? Pretty easy. Percent change in quantity demanded due to a percent change in price. I am telling you right now that you can write it like this. And you say, Max, that's awesome. I'm so good at memorization. I'm totally going to go to law school, and I'm going to do well because I can memorize whatever you throw at me and put it back on a piece of paper on an exam. But that's not good enough for me, all right? Let's spend 2 minutes trying to figure out where this weird formula comes from and then maybe intuitively understand what it means, okay? So let's write this down for a second. What's a percent change in the quantity demanded, right? If you want the percent change in anything, you look at, so percent change in quantity demanded is simply the change in quantity demanded divided by whatever you began with in terms of quantity demanded, right? So if you want to figure out, last week you ate 10 burritos, this week you ate 11 burritos, right? So if you want to know the percent change in burritos eaten this week over last week, the change in burritos from 10 to 11 is 1, right? So delta QD burrito is 1, divided by whatever your baseline quantity of burritos was 10 last week, so it's 1 over 10, it's 10%, right? That's exactly what I wrote up here. The percent change in price is just the change in price over price. If burritos last week were $5 and this week they're $6, the change in price was, well, they're $1 more expensive now, so $1 divided by whatever the price was last week, so change in price $1 divided by price last week, $5, is 20%, right? That's exactly what I wrote down here. Now, question. We're not going to worry about that, okay? So if you want to get exact elasticities, they're defined at any exact point. You can worry about those midpoints, but here I'm really more worried about you understanding the intuition behind elasticities. You're going to put the original value, but in the exams, the secret behind this class is you're never going to have to do any math in your exams. You're going, yes. What, in fact, you should be saying is, well, that's really scary. All right? It is really scary. No math in my exams whatsoever. It's all intuition, because you can learn math in your own time. All right? So the point here is, well, now, Max, you've written the percent change in quantity and the percent change in price. If the elasticity is defined as the percent change in quantity over the percent change in price, I can just take the ratio over the two. Oh, no, you're not going to do this, Max. Yeah, I am. Fractions of fractions? They promised me in high school I'd never have to do it again. Yeah, you do, and you can. It's pretty easy, right? The way I think about it is if you look at the top fraction, there's a lot of burden on this little QD right here, right? There's a delta QD, so this is going to put so much pressure on this thing, so this thing's going to fall to the bottom right here. Okay, so I know this is not kindergarten, but still, QD. And this little P down here, it's just not going to take it. It's going to run around, and it's going to hop straight to the top, all right? Delta P here feels pretty protected because it's got this delta right here. It's like an earthquake triangle, right? So it's just going to stay right where it is. And that, of course, is just delta QD over delta P times P over QD, which is this right here, all right? So an elasticity is simply the slope of the demand curve times price over quantity. You can calculate it that way. It's a nice measure. In fact, when we economists look up in tables how responsive demand is to price, usually these tables are written in terms of elasticity. So it's a really nice way to think about the world. Now, of course, there's not only one value of an elasticity. Price responsiveness is different, right? If my life depends on a certain medication, that I get a certain amount of it every single day, I say my demand for that particular medication is perfectly inelastic, right? No matter what the price is, my quantity demanded is going to be the number of units I need every single day. So perfectly inelastic demand is one where I consume the same quantity independent of price. Doesn't matter what price is, I always demand the same quantity. So if you need, let's say, 5 grams of a certain medicine every day, your perfectly inelastic demand curve looks something like this. It's perfectly vertical, right? Of course, there are settings where the equilibrium quantity consumed you may not be able to afford what you need, right? Scarcity comes in certain settings where there are states of the world where whatever you demand, the quantity you need, you can't actually afford, and we can talk about that later. But the simple concept here is this is the least price-responsive version of demand. Now, what does the most price-responsive version of demand look like? Well, of course, if that thing's vertical, I bet you it's going to be horizontal. Yes, you're right. But why is that? Let me try and sell you something. Let's see if I have a quarter. Okay, imagine I had a quarter for a second, and I'm in the business